Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Development Economics Lesson 5. And today is the continuation of last week's Lesson 4's discussions. That was on poverty, inequality measures, and implications. We did understand that of inequality and we talked about its measures. We mentioned coefficients of variation, we mentioned Lorenz curve, we mentioned Gini curves. And we looked at various ways of understanding it. We said Lorenz curve, when it bends, it's looped from the line of equality. When it's looped towards the right hand side, it means the variation or inequality is wide. If it's closer to the line of equality, the variation, the inequality is lower. So we looked at this and we mentioned some few countries. Today we're going to look at how do we measure poverty. So viewers would follow what is poverty, how it is measured, and then what are some of the implications, which we have already mentioned, but then we'll just highlight some of them. Poverty is actually that lack or deprivation of one satisfying his or his basic needs, be it an individual or a household. The inability to satisfy basic needs mean food, shelter, and clothing, or food, clothing, health, and then what we call protection generally. If one is not able to satisfy it, then that the person is poor. And we said also that UNDP and World Bank in particular, has a numerical measure for poverty, and it is got to do with, as of today, 2023, today being the 6th of December 2023. The measure, it's from the World Bank. They are using numerical figures. That's $2.15 per day. If one cannot spend $2.15 per day and $2.15 per day, means the person is poor. All right. But UNDP has another form of understanding what poverty is, because we understood from our previous discussion that poverty is in two folds or two cutoff points. One is relative poverty and one is absolute poverty. All right. That being the case, it's possible and easier to say, I want to do a head count of people who are poor in my locality. So you move from household to household, check all the household. You are now going to determine how much they spend on breakfast. What type of breakfast? Is it nutritious? You spend on lunch, spend on dinner, or supper rather, on supper. How much and what goes in? Are they nutritious? That will keep the person going healthy. That is what you have to do. When you do that for each of the household, then you find out their income. You can determine which is the poverty line easily. That if the person is not able to attain that level, if it is 111 for meals, and then now the person is taking 011, that's nothing for breakfast, lunch, and he or she eats lunch, and then supper is 011. If it is brunch, it's 101. That's breakfast, no lunch, but dinner. Some people take breakfast and lunch and they skip dinner, or they take very light dinner, maybe some fruits or something. So those are all measures, but then you have to determine which is nutritious and healthy to keep the person balanced. All right, in that sense, we can do a head count measure. The head count measure is very simple. You move from house to house, check how much they spend on their nutritious food. Then on nutritious food that is healthy, then of course you look at the annual income the person gets. If the person is taking, say, $2 a day, $2 times 30 is $60. $60 times 12, 60 times 12 is $720 per annum. So based on that, you'll see that if anybody takes below $500 per year, the person is poor in that locality. So per the graph, you see the income on the vertical, and then on the horizontal, the percentage of population. That tells us that the straight line is the ideal curve, ideal situation, very idealistic situation where salaries keeps going up. From the low income, we have the middle income and the high income in society. So then it's straight, but practically it's not that straight. But if it's straight, then you draw horizontally the poverty line. In between the poverty line on the horizontal and then the vertical, you see that rectangle. That is OP, OPQ, and O tells us that that triangle is the total poverty gap. Is the total poverty gap. So it's very simple. The total poverty gap is just the sum of the difference of poverty line and actual income. levels. In reality, the poverty line is the income line rather. In reality, incomes or income line is close to an S-curve. So per the graph, you can see the S-curve. Then you can see the total poverty gap that is shown as it is between the OPQ and O. All right. If that be the case, if you can do that for every individuals in the community, then the total poverty gap is just a summation of all. It's just a summation of all the households in the community. What if it's the average? Then it means that you just have to take the total poverty gap divided by the population of that community. Then you get the average poverty gap. It's a poverty gap. You can even look for a certain index, a poverty index, normalized poverty index, they normally call it. That's the average poverty gap divided by the what? Income. The poverty income, minimum poverty income. That will give you an index between 0 to 1. So with 1 means the person is at the lowest end of poverty, trying to cross poverty into living much better. 0 means the person is at the lowest ebb of poverty. All right. So the headcount ratios works. However, it must meet certain conditions like we did talk about in inequalities. One of them is got to do with anonymity. When it comes to anonymity, you would have to understand that all incomes are incomes. We don't have rich and poor income. We don't have good income and bad income. How you get it is not the issue, but it's just an income that you earn. Okay. Then the other condition is what we call the scale independence, which is it doesn't matter the currency that you measured in. Okay. The other bit is population independence. It doesn't matter which country and whether the country is high population or lowly populated, whether it's China or India or Mali, like we did indicate. Monotonicity. You see, monotonicity is one that if you add income to someone on the poverty line or below the poverty line, it will not make the poverty any greater. Okay, that's the fourth one. The fifth one is got to do with distribution sensitivity. It is this that the headcount, poverty headcount formula that we discussed earlier failed. The poverty headcount failed this distribution sensitivity, meaning that if you transfer income from a poor person to a rich person, the society becomes poor. Okay, so those are the conditions that won't work. So then if it won't work, then which other formula do we have to go for? We go for the second formula, which is proposed by Foster, Greer and Foster, Greer and Thornbeck, FGT, Foster, Greer and Thornbeck index. This is an index where you see the Foster Greer as P, and then that's P and then infinity or alpha. Okay, if that be the case, you can find the summation of all the incomes divided by the poverty line over the total over just the summation of all incomes minus poverty line. That's a gap over the poverty line income summed up from each and every individual. When you divide by the population, you are going to get a certain index. See, so the sigma is just summation. Then the YP stands for what? The poverty line income. YI stands for YI is a poor person's income. YP is the poverty line income. So then if it is 2 or 3 or 4 people that you're doing, then is the ratio at the top that determines. So the ratio P under script is what we call the FGT index. P under script is the FGT index. Here, let's take it carefully. And if the ratio is 0, any number raised to the 0 power is 1. So it means that once you do that, P0, that's the FGT index, that's P0. That means the raised to the power 0. It means everybody's on the same level. Everybody's on the same level. And that is what USAID, United States Agency for International Development, uses the P0. Because the index, the ratio is to the naught power, 0 power. So that's what they use. So it means they treat everybody as poor in that community. Say refugees, people who have been displaced, they all need blanket, they need food, so you just treat them all equal. So it is used. Let's pause for a commercial break and back. Yeah, welcome back. We were on the Foster-Greer-Thornberky index of measuring poverty. Here, we said that there's a certain summation by the formula we have seen. When you do that summation, it's fine. However, it's a ratio. It's a ratio that is raised to a certain power. And we said the P naught means that the power is zero, brings everybody to the same level. That is, everybody is poor in that society. Say, people who are displaced, wartime, and people are stranded, the victims, they are all the same. They are all vulnerable. So you give them blankets, you give them tents, you give them food, breakfast, lunch, you give them the same rice, they have the same facilities. And that's what US aid uses, the P naught, where it ends up the formula, the P naught, the FGT, Foster-Greer-Thornberk index, is P naught ends at 1, so everybody is treated 1. However, if it is P1, there's a variation. There is that, okay, there's only one step of poverty, so you can determine between the two. But interestingly, Mexico and then UNDP uses the P2, where you can have various degrees of what? Poverty. In poverty, you can establish it because if someone takes $2 a day and another 78 cents a day, they are two different circumstances. If someone is suffering from health poverty and another is suffering from housing without being homeless, one is not able to pay his health insurance and another is not able to, but he has a house. But another hasn't got a house, is homeless, but is able to have health facility. You cannot treat all of them the same. One size does not fit all. One size fits all when it's P naught, that's the, if the Foster-Greer-Thornberk index is 0, the P naught. Okay. But if it is not and there are variations, then you come to P2, where Mexico uses that a lot. They are able to determine the variances or the varying degrees of poverty in the country. So they address that in education, in health, in all forms. So they're able to target the poor and address their situations as to what they really need, on need basis, not one size fits all. So Mexico uses that and they call them Progressa or Oportunidades Progressa program. UNDP also uses it a lot. That is the P2. They use the P2. The P2, I think, is more obvious, that you can determine the grades, the variations in poverty instead of the P naught. Okay. Then the other third one, which is what we're going to, which is the multidimensional poverty measure. The reason being that you remember in our lesson 1 or lesson 2 of development economics, we mentioned Amartya Sen. And Amartya Sen says you cannot measure poverty on incomes alone, because income is only a means to an end. And so if you are paid X amount of dollars or cedis or rupees or sefa, it's only a means to an end. But how you use it, that's the functionality, is what matters. And if you have control over it, you see, how to use it is the functionality, and the capabilities is the control you have over the income. That satisfies your freedom, your freedom of choice. That is what it says it is. So it satisfies that end. So if that be the case, then it means that it's not all about income. You can still measure poverty not dependent on income. For some people can farm, like you see the pawpaw. I mean, they have fruits and all that, and they may not be suffering from food poverty. It does not necessarily mean that they are not poor, but they are not suffering from food poverty. Some others are suffering from food poverty. So then, even if you have the money, this person has food, so it doesn't need to use money to buy food. So if he takes a lower salary, he still got what he needs to get his nutrition balanced. That be the case. So multidimensional poverty can be looked at. Multidimensional poverty index or multidimensional poverty can be measured, which is much better. And you find that whilst you are reading, you find the Foster-Greer-Thornberk also used their same FGT index in various forms, not just the income. They try to understand Amartya Sen's philosophy, which is an old philosophy, but he is leading the development economics, so we have to mention him. All right. So when it's multidimensional, what does that mean? It brings us to UNDP, United Nations Development Program, and then OPHDI, that is Oxford Poverty Index, Human Development Index. OPHDI, Oxford Poverty Human Development Index. They are into this multidimensional poverty. They are big time into it anyway. So they have two cutoff points of poverty. One cutoff point is the monetary one. The other cutoff point is various measures. The various measures are not too many, about 8 of them. So each of them has a certain weighting. One being your nutrition, the health, one being the health in the sense that has one got balanced diet, not necessarily nutritious diet to live healthy. Then what about child mortality? Then the other one is the education, the years one goes into school or one doesn't go to school. How long does the person go to school? Does the person graduate? That's another weighting. Then drinking water, potable drinking water is very important. Instead of contaminated water, potable drinking water is very important. The other one is sanitation. Are we using water closet systems for one family, one household, or are we using pit latrines for the community? That is not good enough. It falls below sustainable development goals that we will be looking at, but that is not accepted. I mean, in this world where, so then it sends one to the level of poverty under sanitation. If one has to be drinking water, sharing water with animals, that is not potable water. And a high number of people in the world, especially in sub-Saharan Africa, are sharing water with animals, grazing animals, which is not right. Okay, so Oxford puts it this way: cooking fuel. Do you use cooking fuel? Which cooking fuel do you use? Do you use electricity or gas? But if you use wood, fossil energy, natural forms like clay and all that, no, it's not accepted. It comes under poverty. Then the other issue is electricity. Electricity penetration in various countries are very high. So sometimes when you're measuring it, it doesn't give a true picture, because some countries have high penetration, but those penetration doesn't mean everybody in the country has electricity. So you need to do a more detailed study to find out that a country like Ghana that has about 78 to 80% electricity penetration doesn't mean everybody has electricity. So then you look at that. Then assets like electronics, TV, fridges, mobile phones, they are modern gadgets, but it is said that if you don't have, it tends to be, you become poor. So you need to have them. Then one is housing. So we have dealt with housing, food including water and sanitation, food including nutrition, and we have dealt with health, mortality rates. Then housing. If you live in a house where the roof is natural material, say thatch, no, you are poor. If you live in a house where the roof is mud, you are poor. If you live in a house which is made of mud and the roof is mud or thatch, it pushes one into poverty bracket. That's one fact of it. Under the OPHDI index, the multidimensional index for Oxford. So we have to look at all this. They look at all this. Don't bother about the calculations, because you just need to follow and understand what it is. When you read, you would follow even better. So then those are the measures. When those are put in weighting, you count them, put a weighting, then divide by a factor, and it tells you which country poverty rate is, multidimensional poverty is. It puts India quite on a high level as of year 2022. Multidimensional poverty is very high. Multidimensional poverty for Ghana, for instance, is 45.1%. So it means about half of the people are multidimensionally poor. Child mortality, nutritional health, housing, decent housing, those are the issues. Sanitation, water closet. I don't waste my time with sanitation. I just put it straight, water closet for a household, a family. Then you have potable drinking water. Are you drinking water with animals? Are you sharing water with animals? Those are issues that are not right. See, we have to look at those things. So the multidimensional poverty for Ghana is about 45.1%. That for Nigeria is a bit higher. But Nigeria has a big population, so it's not the very best. So these are poverty measures. And when these are happening with inequalities, it leads to a certain clear inequality, because 45% multidimensional poverty in Ghana means some of the children, a large number of children, don't complete primary education. The 6 years, they don't complete it. So, or the 8 years rather, they don't complete it. So then it means that there's a problem. No wonder a lot of children are on the streets selling um, all sorts of fruits and items on the street, on the high streets, traffic prone, putting their life in danger. And of course, let's not forget those young boys who are car screen wiping. All comes under this. It's multidimensional poverty. People are ill, they can't even get to hospitals. Not because the hospitals are not just close to them, but because they can't afford it. The insurance system seems to be not able to cater for a wider variety of illness, and that is leading to mortality. People are dying before 60, people are dying before 50, some are dying before 40s. Those are issues that governments must look at under development economics. Not just one government, all developing countries. This course is about developing countries. It's not about developed countries. It's about developing countries. The name is H. Kwame Afagbo. Thank you.